Okay, so good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Monica Kang. I am currently in Washington, D.C. This is evening time, and I'm super excited to be here. Thank you all for joining. I chose the topic how to creatively stay sane and limitless, even in crisis, because we are in the midst of an interesting time. So first, kudos for everyone who's in the front line. Thank you all for what you do. And thank you all for being here to take a moment to pause and think, how are we going to make this through? So a little bit about myself. I'm an entrepreneur, an author, and my specialty is in helping unlock creative mindset across cultures and leaders and teams, and helping individuals like yourself, no matter where you are, to be creative. So let's get started. Change in itself is inevitable, right? We see change all the time. The question is, what can we do about it and how do we face it? Because frankly, it's a little scary. Right now, I think many of us are probably spending days ups and downs. I'm human too, same here. And the question is, what can we do about it? How do we go from here to actually more of here? And I mean by being more curious, wondering, and pausing instead of being less reactive to the situations. How do we do that? Oh, mhm, that's weird. Okay. Let me. Can you hear me okay though? Okay. Try to play one more time. Does that work? Mm-hmm. Hmm. This, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I can do it like this. I can't do some of the little graphic fun stuff, but I will explain. Okay, so let me see. Let me see how it works. Oops. No, I might not be able to change to the next slide. Oh no. Is there any other way that I could? Well, this is a perfect example. Change is always happening, including presentation moments. You might see a little preview, but let me just do it this way then. I can't think of another way to address it right now. And I know it's sensitive on time, unless you have another solution. I tried that, it didn't work, but yeah, because I clicked the next slide. It didn't do the clicking as I want. But so this is actually then, like I said, a perfect example, right? We're going to keep seeing a lot of things where no matter how much we plan, things will probably not evolve the way that we hope. But the beautiful thing is that improvement and change is not going to happen if we just expect to sit and do nothing with it. So including ourselves here, right? Like we're trying to figure out what we can do differently. And now we know that I might need to pivot slightly. So excuse on that appearance. So three things that I want to cover with all of you is I want to share briefly about my story for context. I want to share some tools and how you can unlock your mindset regardless of the situation, including scenarios like this. And three, what are specific tools and questions for entrepreneurs and leaders who are joining in now? So this is me. Look a bit younger than I am now. This was 10 years ago, me, when I used to work at the United Nations in Geneva. For many of us who are in international affairs and public policy, it's kind of a dream job. And as you can see, I was quite happy. And I was happy because, I pursued everything I could to be in that role. And I continue to be building on that niche, which was in nuclear security, aka kind of nuclear weapon security, and how to prevent the bad guys from having it, and leading that to the innovation work I'm doing. There's a whole story to how I got from A to B, but what I hope you recognize from this context is how much uncertainty there was along the way. I didn't really have any role models. I felt like I didn't really have a clear path. I really had to have building blocks. And one of the things that I realized that really pushed me to think about uncertainty and change was, how do you look at it in a different way? And I found that mindset was a core piece that it came back. So first, let me break this down for us. What happened between here to here? Well, this was what happened for me. I was in a job I loved, but I was very depressed, and I felt stuck. And even though I read Steve Jobs' quote like this, it wasn't really as helpful in understanding, so what can I do even if I love my job? And I realized this was what I was missing. I couldn't remember the last time I created something and was coming from me. Now I am going around the world helping other people unhack that, because I realized what helped me getting from feeling stuck and depressed in a job I love, which was nuclear weapons, to re-loving that job and actually pursuing and helping others build that mindset, was unlocking a creative mindset. And you're probably wondering, okay, that sounds great, but please tell me how that works. Well, let me take a step at a time. And one thing that you'll probably notice is we can't expect change by repeating the same thing, right? Including moments like what we just had earlier, but many other things in our current work routine in our life. If we want to see improvement, if we want to see something that is changing, we have to change the way it's done instead of repeating the same thing. It's like trying to fit the IKEA wrong thing, and it's wonder it's not why working, because it's putting the wrong pieces together. So let me go ahead and rewire your brain a little bit to see how we can shift our mindset and explore what that could mean for us. This is a formula I love about understanding creativity, and it really helped me rethink about that mindset piece. I'll give you a little hint. C stands for creativity. F is the function, and I want you to think for a moment what K, I, and E stands for. And maybe if the folks, since I can't see the chat room, if there's response, what does K, I, or E stands for? Well, I often do these presentations and travel around the world. I do about 80 or 100 a year sometimes. And what I realized is K and I, a lot of people are around to get around with it. K means knowledge. I is imagination. And that seems to click immediately with everyone. It's like, that makes sense, right? Like, being creative means I have to have a lot of knowledge. I need to learn a lot of things. From jazz to blockchain to health, like if I can connect the dots in a different way, that's my eye kicking and imagination. But the key is that, how is E making sense? And people are like, empathy, environment. And I say often, it might be surprising, but it's actually evaluation. And we're like, what? How does this work? Well, let's take a moment and think about it. The last time you were probably being creative, it's not just because you had different insight and you had a different idea. It's because you actually kicked in and had your E, evaluation, help you understand what decision and what are the ideas you chose. Actually, so even just a moment ago, that incident that we just had in thinking about, how do we problem solve this because the slides are not working, we had our evaluation kick in as a moment ago, right? We had a couple alternatives that we were trying to test out, but like, okay, based on time, let's choose this medium as an option. And that's a perfect example of probably how you're problem solving every single moment. And what's important to recognize is how E, hence once we build awareness, is playing a powerful role in how we make decisions more thoughtfully. So now then, sometimes I have folks saying like, does that mean then time constraint and resource constraint, maybe this whole staying home constraint could be a positive thing, so I should just put more constraints? I'm like, yes, constraints, when understood thoughtfully, can be an effective way to think differently because the original way doesn't work. But you need the other elements too. Are you feeling like you can learn a lot of things? Do you feel encouraged to have your imagination? And so as more teams are working remotely or in different scenarios right now, the key is to think about, despite the E kicking in, which is in a way right now the crisis that we're facing, how are we making sure that we still protect the space to have the K and the I so that we get creative with it and feel limitless? And I believe there is a reason why, hence in the English word, idea, creativity, and innovation are all different words. Idea is when you have the K and the I. Creativity is when it kicks into action. And innovation is when creativity is built over time. And this is probably the reason why all the silly activities, even the way just, how you ignite and silly questions that you look at, those are all small ways you're building your creative thinking muscle. Thinking differently. That's what's helping you get into the creative flow, feeling limitless, even in constraints moment like this. But if we're not making time to exercise that creative thinking muscle, of course it's hard. Of course it's going to feel unsure. And it's supposed to be a very messy process. That's why even our conversation right now, some of us are probably picking up in other aspects. For other individuals, it might have been the C, but we're going to all pick up on something different. And I hope that I am pushing you to ask different questions as we're going this through. And a few things to understand about our brain. These are 4 things I hope we keep in mind as we think about how we can then push out and stay more creative. First, please note that we become what we consume. So if you're noticing that, I don't know how to get away from these negative thoughts and fear-driven thoughts, well, think about, what are you consuming your entire day? Are you just reading a lot of the news about that information? Or you're perhaps talking with a lot of your colleagues only about the things you're worried about? Is there perhaps a way that you can think about how you note what you consume? So if you're aware of that, you might want to take a pause and say, okay, I want to be intentional about consuming more positive things, more solution-driven things. That might impact the way your brain is processing. And it takes time to practice. So practice thinking and make time to wonder limitlessly, because your brain is consuming and practicing your flow. Our brain is also a lot more sensitive and stronger than we think. And I think a beautiful quote that we probably all heard of that makes sense is that we underestimate what we can do in 5 years, but we overestimate what we do in a year. So yes, set weekly goals, monthly goals, year goals, but don't let that be the point where you give up just because a few things became in your obstacle. And make space to go slow, to go fast. If you haven't taken a break away from your screen, please do so, right? If you felt like you haven't slept properly, please take a break. Because if your brain is just working nonstop, you know how your computer works, it's going to crash. Your brain is going to crash too, and it's going to be important you pace so that you can go faster. So yes, all of this is going to take a lot of courage, a lot of patience. But what I hope you realize is that through this, you can think about how we can think more space and give more space to be creative. So now you're still probably wondering, well, okay, that's great, but how can we be more creative together when we're all still stressed? Well, I want to break this down for you into the formula of what I call, how are you? And it starts with this. First, how are you as a person? And which takes self-awareness. Do you know what makes you happy? Have you taken the time to eat and sleep? Have you taken the time to unplug and think? Make time to connect with people you love and care. Because if you aren't happy and if you're not recharged, just like your phone that will crash and your computer will crash, you will crash as well. So while you want to go problem solve, while you want to solve all these problems, while you might be unsure of what to do with it, start with one day at a time, one half day of the time. Did I have lunch today? Maybe I just need to take a quick break. And give yourself space for care, because if your center is not grounded, it's going to be hard to do all these other things, let alone think differently or have the courage to do so, because it takes a lot of energy and process. And that next to the next thing, which is, how are we? You probably have a team that you work with. Some of us have accountability teams. even solopreneurs or individuals who work in different places, you have a team of community that is with you. And for us to know as a team that how we are is psychological safety. How does your team feel right now? Do you feel comfortable talking about challenges and stressful moments without causing more stress? That's a lot of extra EQ and empathy that goes in it. And it's going to be even more crucial in how you build that online when there's so much room for miscommunication. So feel free to take a snapshot, right? So there's a lot of questions you want to think about as we're spending more time remotely. Like, can this task be done without a meeting? Because I know a lot of us are spending time in back-to-back meetings. Who are all the key stakeholders who really need to be involved? And when we think about the team care as a collective, we'll notice that it's a lot easier to process even the uncertainty, because we're creating a safe space emotionally to work together. So that leads me to know the third circle, which is how are we as a community? Because we're going to need a lot of communities to work through challenges like this. And to be limitless, it's not just you. We want to be limitless all together. And this is why I'm excited to be here with you, because I want all of you to be more limitless. And when we look at the community about, okay, what is the pain point? If I'm thinking about my entrepreneur community, or probably about cash flow, how do we figure out how do we pivot the business or make sure that the teams are all okay and figuring out what's next? How do we help the brick and mortar business because customer line is very different? How do I help my other female entrepreneurs, female speakers, those in hospitality, those who are doctors? Their pain points are all different, and how to best support them is going to be different. And the empathy is a key word that comes to mind when we think about the community piece. And together, all of that, I call it the eye of curiosity. And that's why I put this little smiley mark here of this note, because when we choose to see things with curiosity, it permits us to walk away from having that fear, jar, reaction feeling to like, what can I do differently with this? And even in business, you repeat the same thing, right? You start with, how can I do something different in my business? How would I do this in my business team? And how would I do this as a business community? But the key thing I hope you realize, it starts with being curious. So here are a few other things I want to leave with you. Start asking more I noticed and I wonder phrases. And when you notice that I'm not feeling comfortable right now, I am feeling very anxious, take a next step and think about, okay, I am having that reaction, but what will I do to respond? Because you still have a choice. Yes, feeling that reaction of I'm not happy, this is not comfortable with me is a reaction, but you can choose to respond a certain way with it. And if it helps, feel free to pause. We took a quick pause and say, hey, can we time out because something's not working? And that's great. Because if not, then I wouldn't have realized that, you might be missing when I thought you would all be seeing this. So absolutely pause. And know what your happy list is, because we're absolutely going to have some moments where we might need a change. And that's the very aspect of where sometimes we might need to be that very person to give that extra hug to somebody else. Just like we might need that hug from somebody today. But through that, I hope you know that creativity really is understanding how we can all see something else when nobody else sees. And in a way, it's the black and white reality that I know it's scary right now. There's a crisis. We have a lot of uncertainty. But with the limitless thinking, I hope you see how you can see this now in color. That's the power of a creative mindset. And so I hope you think about, that's all great, but what will I do with this? Please don't walk away and say that, that's fine. I get that we have a messy road ahead, and we certainly have no idea what's happening tomorrow as well, but you do know that you are in control in your thoughts. You can choose how to respond and be patient, persistent, and courageous in how you embrace it. So know that it's not going to be overnight. It's more about the consistency, as Simon Sinek says, and it's really about your imagination. That's going to be really important. And so on that note, I encourage you to be limitless, stay healthy. These are other free tools I made. Please stay in touch, reach out any other questions I have. And if I have any few more minutes, I'll open up for a Q&A. And thank you all very much for joining. And I had to rapid firely go through, so hope this has been helpful. Is there any questions or comments? Can't see the window. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining. I'll share these links later, but stay limitless, and please note that your mindset is so crucial. One thing I want to add to this is that note that this is an uncertainty marathon that we are going through, and just pace yourself. We have no control in what's happening in the world, but you can control the things one at a time. Your thoughts, how you feel happy, what will you do with it? And each time, each step is a building block. And so please use that and know that you can always choose to be limitless. So if you have any questions, reach out anytime. And I hope that this has given you hope in how you can stay limitless and be creative and stay sane, even in a crisis like this. So thank you very much. So I pass it back to you.